So finally, something that's not an SUV. We have a hatchback to test, and a very important one at that. This is the Hyundai Grand i10 Nios, which is the successor to the very popular Grand i10. Now, the Grand i10 isn't going to go anywhere soon. This car is going to be selling alongside the Grand i10, but obviously it's bigger, it's more spacious, better equipped, and crucially, it's a segment higher and pitted directly against the Swift. In fact, the Swift's jugular is what Hyundai is going for. It's got a petrol option and a diesel option like before, but crucially, you've got AMT versions, automatic versions for both. And now we've got both these cars here in Udaipur to tell you what they're about. But before I drive off, let's have a closer look at what's new and if the Nios, which means more, lives up to its name. For starters, it's wider and longer than the Grand i10 and looks more grown up too. Gone is the two-part grille, and what you get is a massive single grille which you can't miss. And quite frankly, it looks a touch too big. What looks really cool are those boomerang-shaped DRLs tucked away at the edge of the grille, and top variants also get projector lights. The sides get sharper creases in the bodywork, and the 15-inch diamond cut alloys look terrific. Another well-executed detail is the textured blacked-out section in the C-pillar with i10 embossed on one side. Move to the rear and you'll notice the Hyundai H has gotten bigger, and you'll find a shark fin antenna on the roof, and there's even a chrome strip at the base of the tailgate. The tail lamps, however, are still a touch small. So for sure the Nios looks good, but what's it like to drive? Now I've started out in the 1.2 petrol manual, and this variant is going to form the bulk of Nios sales, just like it was with the Grand i10. In fact, this is the same engine and transmission from the Grand i10. The only difference is that this one is BS6 compliant. It meets the latest emission regulations now, and typically that comes with a penalty of fuel consumption. But in this car, this is actually 1 kpl more fuel efficient, and that's because it's lighter. It's 30 to 40 kilos lighter because they're using more tensile steel in this, high tensile strength steel, which is lighter and stronger. And also the engine has been more finely tuned, the ECU has been more finely tuned. So Hyundai has managed to actually give even better fuel efficiency on the test cycle. But has the move to BS6 impacted performance? Now this 1.2 petrol, it's great in the city, it's quite responsive, it's good on path throttle, you can just amble along, you really don't feel it's underpowered, it keeps up with the traffic. So as a city car, it does quite well, but the minute you get on the highway and you want more out of it, you are greeted by what is a very gutless bottom end. There's just absolutely nothing low down in the revs. You have to rev the hell out of this engine, wring its neck to get the most out of it. So really on the highway you'll be pushing this engine quite a bit, and quite frankly it doesn't have the zing of the Suzuki K series which you get in the Swift. And now to check out how it handles. Now with a stiffer chassis you can soften the suspension a bit without having an impact on body control, and the Nios has a slightly softer setup over the Grand i10. It's a little bit more pliant, it's a little bit more plush, but you still get a little bit of vertical movement over these undulations on this road. It's fairly planted, it's quite secure. You can cruise happily at 3-digit speeds, just that the steering isn't super accurate. You have to make small corrections while going through these sweepers over here. Again, this car isn't made for the highway. It's been tuned for the city where the light steering is a boon. But if you are taking it out of town, it's a car that's quite comfortable at speeds as well. Quite clearly, this is a car that's designed to be a happy city commuter and not one that encourages spirited driving. So is the diesel Nios any different? I've slipped into the AMT variant to see what it's like. You get an automatic option for both the petrol and diesel engines, and right now I'm in the diesel automatic. What's interesting is that the diesel and the petrol both come with AMTs and not the torque converter of the Grand i10. Now, in terms of hierarchy, a torque converter is normally superior, it's smoother. AMTs are considered the poor man's automatic. But quite frankly, for our conditions, AMTs are making more sense. Firstly, because they are far more fuel efficient. In fact, one of the reasons why the Grand i10 Auto wasn't popular is because it guzzled fuel. The other thing also is that there is a big cost advantage. The only real downside is, and that's the biggest downside, is just the way the power is delivered. AMT is not typically as smooth as the conventional torque converters. You do get a bit of that head nod or that interruption in power. And on this version, Hyundai has improved it quite a bit. We saw it first on the Santro, but it's really been improved further after that. Now, driving in Udaipur, that pause between gear shifts doesn't really bother you too much. AMTs have come a long way, and Hyundai's AMT is particularly good. It's only when you're going from first to second that the head nod is most pronounced. This 3-cylinder diesel engine develops 75 horsepower like before and isn't the most refined, with that noticeable thrum at idle. It's reasonably punchy, but again runs out of steam on the highway. But surprisingly, the diesel variant felt better than the petrol Nios on these monsoon-ravaged roads. I was quite surprised by the pounding this car could take. Now, on rough roads, I prefer the diesel basically for two reasons. Because firstly, to accommodate the heavier diesel engine, the front suspension has been beefed up, which is good. And the other reason is that on this AMT variant, which doesn't come in a top spec, you get a smaller 14-inch wheel, and with that is a tire with a higher profile or a taller sidewall, and that really cushions you against the shocks. And just how well does the cabin pamper you? I'm back in the top spec petrol to see how comfortable and well equipped it is. So I'm inside the Grand i10 Nios, and like most Hyundai cabins, this is a nice place to be. It's quite a refreshing design in here. Firstly is the choice of colors. You've got this grey and white kind of theme, even from the seats, even to the dashboard. You've got some interesting texture over here, a bit of a design elements. I love the rotary vents over here. They have a nice quality feel to it. The instrumentation, again, quite unique. You've got an analog tack and a digital speedo. Overall, plastics, I have to say, are not absolutely brilliant. In fact, I dare say the Santro's plastics in certain areas feel better. But let's not forget that this isn't a premium hatch, it's a mid hatch. So obviously some things are going to be dumbed down. Even in terms of equipment, you've not got all the toys, but you have got, which is a first in class, wireless charging. The 8-inch touchscreen is the largest in class, and placed high, it's easy to operate. And yes, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is there. Overall, the Nios doesn't fare too badly on the equipment front, but does miss out on things like auto headlamps and rain-sensing wipers, which rivals offer. Let's check out the back seat. Now, the sense of space in the back seat, well, it's really, really good. And that's not just because the legroom is impressive or the headroom is very generous even for tall people, but the light colors inside, which gives a sense of airiness. The seat also good under thigh support, and the base is canted up, so that also helps. You've got rear aircon vents. But overall, the seat is quite flat. It is actually a bench. There's no armrest. There are no proper contours, so it doesn't really hold you in. But clearly, this has been designed for 3 people. Let's not forget that this is a family hatch, and Hyundai want to pack in as many people as it can. And actually, if you compare this to the Grand i10 and even the competition, there's far more space in the new Nios. It's a practical cabin too, with generous door pockets, a decent sized glove box which has a very useful shelf above it. The 260-litre boot is marginally bigger than before, but not as big as the Swift's. The back seat flips down, but the release straps are a bit fiddly to use. So then, to sum up, should you buy a Nios? Is it that much better than the Grand i10, and is it a better alternative to the Swift? Well, it doesn't quite have the Swift's individualistic appeal, and nor is it as much fun to drive. But to live with, the Nios, with its easy driving manners, comfortable and practical cabin, comes out on top. This new Grand i10 is more of an evolution than a revolution, but it has a well-rounded versatility that makes it much more of a complete package now.